Rentvesting is a really popular way to get into the property market. It's a strategy that's been around for years, but the buzzword rentvesting has gained popularity in recent years because it's become really well known as a way that first home buyers can get into the market. It's a way that you can basically continue renting in the suburb where you want to live, which is a little bit more affordable than buying, and then you go and buy a home in a different suburb or even a different city or state altogether where house prices are more affordable. For instance, if you live in Sydney and you live in an area where house prices are over $1 million and that's out of your budget, you could look at rentvesting in an area that's in a totally different state, buy something for around $400,000, and that way you're getting your foot on the property ladder, but you're still able to keep up the lifestyle of where you want to live. Rentvesting is a way that you can get into the property market a little sooner than you'd think, but there are a few things you need to be aware of before you go down this path. The first thing to keep in mind is that you are going to lose your eligibility for all the first home buyer grants. This is really important because they're worth up to $10,000 or even $20,000 depending on the state or territory you live in. The thing about most of these grants is they're only available on a new build or if you are purchasing an off-the-plan property. So you have to keep that in mind when you're deciding whether you're going to go down this path. Once you become a homeowner, you lose access to these grants forever, so it's really important to weigh this up. The second thing to consider is that the same applies for stamp duty. So as a first home buyer, you're eligible for a stamp duty concession or discount, and again, depending on where you live, it can be worth up to $10,000, even more. To give you a bit of an example, the difference can be if you're in Queensland, for instance, and you buy a $400,000 home. As a first home buyer, you'll pay $0 stamp duty. As a homeowner, you'll pay around $4,000 stamp duty, but as an investor, you'll pay $10,000 or $11,000 stamp duty. So it's a really, really big difference. It's something you'll need to budget for as a rentvestor, and again, once you buy a property, you lose access to this grant or concession forever. The third thing to consider as a rentvestor is that you're going to be buying a more affordable property type or in a more affordable location. And what this means is you're probably going to have access to slower capital growth over time. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it just means that you're going to have a bit more patience. If you buy a property in Sydney, that's going to have more growth drivers, property prices are going to increase over time at a higher level than if you buy a property in a regional area where there are less growth drivers. Now, all of these things don't mean that rentvesting is an expensive or a bad strategy. It's actually a really good way to get into the property market, but you have to weigh up all of the costs and considerations before you go down this path. It's something that I did myself many years ago, but back then the grants and concessions weren't quite as attractive as they are today. What I'd recommend you do is look at all of the costs and all of the savings, see what you'd be giving up, but also see what you'd be gaining by rentvesting. We do have a ton of information on the website. We've got guides at finder.com.au about rentvesting and about first home buyers grants. We'll include all the links below so you can check it out and work out what the best decision for you is going to be.